Do you remember when every party had a cheese ball on the table and Mom spent all afternoon making treats from scratch? The 1970s were the golden age of homemade snacking, when everything from popcorn balls to deviled eggs came straight from the kitchen. Today we are looking back at 25 forgotten homemade snacks from the 1970s that almost no one makes anymore. Let's start with homemade Chex Party Mix. Before you could buy it in a bag at the grocery store, Chex Party Mix was something you made from scratch in your own kitchen. The recipe first appeared on Chex cereal boxes in the 1950s, but by the 1970s it had become the ultimate party staple. You would melt butter in a big roasting pan, stir in Worcestershire sauce and seasoned salt, then toss in rice Chex, corn Chex, wheat Chex, mixed nuts, and pretzel sticks. The whole thing went into the oven at 250 degrees for about an hour, stirring every 15 minutes. The smell that filled the house was incredible. Some families called it nuts and bolts. Others added Cheerios or Bugles. Everyone added extra butter and way more seasoned salt than the recipe called for. That was the secret. When General Mills started selling pre-made Chex Mix in bags in the mid-1980s, the homemade version slowly disappeared. Anyone who has tasted the real thing will tell you the bagged stuff does not even come close. The cheese ball. Nothing said party in the 1970s quite like a cheese ball sitting on a platter surrounded by Ritz crackers. Cheese balls had been around since the 1940s, but they hit peak popularity during the 70s when cocktail parties and potlucks were in full swing. The classic recipe called for cream cheese blended with sharp cheddar, Worcestershire sauce, onion powder, and garlic powder, all shaped into a ball and rolled in chopped toasted pecans. Every hostess had her own variation. Some added crumbled blue cheese, others mixed in chopped green onions or port wine for a deep reddish hue. The cheese ball was always made a day ahead, so the flavors could meld in the refrigerator. Julia Child even had a famous Roquefort version. By the 1990s, the cheese ball was considered old-fashioned, and it quietly disappeared from most party spreads. Today you might spot one at a holiday gathering in the Midwest, but for most of America, the cheese ball is a relic of a different era. Jell-O salad molds. If you grew up in the 1970s, you know that Jell-O was not just a dessert. It was a side dish, an appetizer, and sometimes the centerpiece of the entire buffet table. Jell-O salads came in every shape imaginable, thanks to decorative copper and aluminum molds that hung on kitchen walls. Lime Jell-O with shredded carrots and celery was a classic. So was strawberry Jell-O with fruit cocktail suspended inside. Some versions were truly adventurous, combining lemon gelatin with tuna fish, olives, and mayonnaise. Making a proper Jell-O mold was an art form. You had to get the layers just right and let each one set before adding the next. Unmolding it onto the serving platter without it collapsing was the real test of skill. The 1970s took the concept to its most creative and sometimes bizarre extreme. Today, almost nobody makes a molded Jell-O salad, and those beautiful copper molds are more likely found in antique shops than kitchens. Popcorn balls. Before microwave popcorn and movie theater butter flavoring, there were homemade popcorn balls. These sticky, sweet, crunchy treats were a staple of Halloween, fall festivals, and school bake sales throughout the 1970s. You would pop a big batch of popcorn on the stovetop, then cook up a simple syrup of sugar, corn syrup, butter, and a little salt until it reached the right temperature. The hot syrup got poured over the popcorn, and then came the fun part. You had to butter your hands and quickly shape the mixture into balls before it cooled and hardened. Some families added food coloring for holidays, orange for Halloween, red and green for Christmas. Others mixed in candy corn or peanuts. The tricky part was getting the syrup to the right stage. Too soft and the balls fell apart, too hard and they could crack a tooth. By the 1980s, Concerns about homemade treats from strangers made parents nervous about Halloween popcorn balls, and they slowly faded from tradition. Before we move on, I'd like to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, a like and a subscribe truly helps us continue making these videos for you. We really appreciate it. Deviled eggs with paprika. Every church potluck, every family reunion, every holiday dinner in the 1970s had a platter of deviled eggs. And not just any deviled eggs. These were made with a very specific formula. Hard-boiled eggs were halved, the yolks mashed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, a splash of pickle juice, and a pinch of salt and pepper. The filling was piped or spooned back into the whites, and every single one was dusted with paprika. That paprika was non-negotiable. Some fancier versions added sweet pickle relish or a tiny piece of olive on top. Every family had a special deviled egg carrier, a plastic or ceramic plate with oval indentations to keep each egg in place. These carriers were essential for transporting eggs to potlucks. While deviled eggs still exist today, the 1970s version, with its paprika and mustard simplicity, has largely been replaced by gourmet variations with sriracha, avocado, and bacon. The original never needed any of that. Grape jelly meatballs. This one sounds strange if you have never tried it, but grape jelly meatballs were one of the most beloved party appetizers of the 1970s. The recipe was dead simple. You combined a jar of grape jelly with a bottle of chili sauce in a slow cooker or chafing dish, added frozen or homemade meatballs, and let everything simmer until the meatballs were glazed in a sticky, sweet, and savory coating. The slow cooker had just become a household phenomenon in the early 70s, and this recipe was one of the first to take full advantage of it. Guests would spear the meatballs with toothpicks, and the platter would be empty within minutes. The recipe first appeared in the 1960 cookbook Elegant but Easy, and spread through church cookbooks and neighborhood recipe exchanges. Some versions used cranberry sauce instead of grape jelly. The combination sounds odd, but the sweet and tangy glaze was genuinely delicious. Today, grape jelly meatballs are rarely seen at parties, replaced by more sophisticated options that, honestly, are not nearly as fun. Divinity candy. Making Divinity was a rite of passage for home cooks in the 1970s. This billowy, cloud-like candy sat somewhere between fudge and meringue, and tasted absolutely heavenly, which is how it got its name. The recipe called for sugar, corn syrup, and water cooked to the hard ball stage on a candy thermometer, then slowly poured into stiffly beaten egg whites while mixing on high speed. Chopped pecans were folded in at the end. When it worked, Divinity was light, airy, and melt-in-your-mouth sweet. When it did not work, it was a sticky, grainy disaster. Humidity was the enemy. Experienced candy makers knew to only attempt Divinity on a cool, dry day. Making it on a rainy or humid afternoon was a recipe for failure. Divinity was a Christmas tradition in many households, especially across the South, where it appeared on candy platters alongside fudge and peanut brittle. By the 1990s, fewer people had the patience or skill to attempt it, and Divinity quietly disappeared from most holiday tables. Rumaki. If you attended a cocktail party in the 1970s, chances are you encountered rumaki. This exotic-sounding appetizer was chicken livers and water chestnuts wrapped in bacon, secured with a toothpick, glazed with a sweet soy-based marinade, and broiled until the bacon was crispy. The dish originated in the tiki bar craze of the mid-century, most likely invented by Trader Vic in the 1940s. It remained wildly popular through the 1970s as a go-to hors d'oeuvre for anyone hosting a sophisticated gathering. The combination of creamy liver, crunchy water chestnut, and salty bacon was surprisingly addictive. But as Americans moved away from organ meats in the 1980s, rumaki fell out of favor fast. Today, If you mention Rumaki to anyone under 50, you will almost certainly get a blank stare. It is one of those snacks that defined an era and then vanished completely. Cheese straws. These crispy, buttery, cheesy twists were a staple of Southern entertaining in the 1970s. Cheese straws date back to the 1800s, but they were at their peak popularity during the 70s when finger foods and make-ahead appetizers were in high demand. The recipe was straightforward. You combined flour, butter, sharp cheddar cheese, and a pinch of cayenne pepper into a dough, then piped or rolled it into thin strips and baked them until golden and flaky. The result was something like a savory shortbread with a sharp cheese bite and just enough heat from the cayenne. Every Southern grandmother had a cheese straw press, and the ability to make good cheese straws was considered a genuine social skill. They were piled into tins and given as gifts during the holidays. While you can still find cheese straws in parts of the South, the homemade version, made with a hand crank press, has become increasingly rare. Ants on a log. This was the quintessential after-school snack of the 1970s. Celery sticks filled with peanut butter and topped with raisins. Simple, wholesome, and fun to eat. The name alone made kids giggle. The recipe had been around since at least the 1950s, often credited to the Girl Scouts, but it became a household staple in the 70s when moms were looking for quick, nutritious snacks they could prepare in minutes. Some families used cream cheese instead of peanut butter. Others swapped raisins for chocolate chips or sunflower seeds. The beauty of ants on a log was that kids could make it themselves, which made it feel special. It was a fixture at brownie meetings, birthday parties, and summer camps. Today, with peanut allergies so widespread in schools, ants on a log has largely disappeared from the after-school snack rotation, and a whole generation of kids has grown up without ever making one. Pigs in a blanket. In the 1970s, pigs in a blanket meant cocktail sausages or mini hot dogs wrapped in crescent roll dough and baked until golden brown. They were everywhere. Birthday parties, Super Bowl gatherings, holiday potlucks, school cafeterias. The recipe was popularized after appearing in a 1957 Betty Crocker cookbook and became one of the most requested appetizers of the following 2 decades. You would pop open a can of Pillsbury crescent rolls, cut each triangle into smaller strips, wrap them around Little Smokies, and bake for about 12 minutes. Served with ketchup and yellow mustard for dipping, they were irresistible. Some families got fancy and brushed them with melted butter and sesame seeds. Others added a strip of American cheese inside. While you can still find variations today, the classic 1970s version, made with crescent roll dough and Little Smokies, is far less common than it used to be. Salmon mousse. This one is hard to imagine today, but in the 1970s, salmon mousse was the height of sophistication. It was made by blending canned salmon with cream cheese, mayonnaise, lemon juice, gelatin, and diced onion, then pouring the mixture into a fish-shaped mold and chilling it until firm. When unmolded, it sat on the serving platter looking like an actual fish, complete with a sliced olive for an eye and cucumber slices for scales. Guests would spread it on crackers or toast points. Salmon mousse appeared in nearly every entertaining cookbook of the decade. The combination of fish, mayo, and gelatin might sound unappetizing to modern tastes, but it was genuinely beloved. As Americans moved toward fresher, lighter cuisine in the 1980s, the molded salmon mousse became a punchline rather than a party centerpiece. Which of these snacks brings back the strongest memories for you? Share your favorites in the comments. Homemade peanut brittle. Christmas in the 1970s meant homemade candy, and peanut brittle was right at the top of the list. Making it required a candy thermometer, nerves of steel, and good timing. You cooked sugar, corn syrup, water, and raw peanuts together until the thermometer hit 300 degrees, the hard crack stage. Then you quickly stirred in butter, vanilla, and baking soda, which made the mixture foam and gave the brittle its signature airy texture. The whole thing was poured onto a buttered cookie sheet and spread thin before it hardened. Done right, peanut brittle was a perfect combination of sweet, salty, buttery, and crunchy. Done wrong, it was a burnt, sticky mess that could pull out a filling. Families passed down their brittle recipes for generations. It was packed into tins and given as holiday gifts to neighbors, teachers, and mail carriers. Store-bought versions never captured the same homemade magic, and today very few people attempt this candy at home. The cheese and pineapple hedgehog. This was possibly the most visually memorable party snack of the 1970s. You took half a grapefruit or melon, wrapped it in aluminum foil, and stuck it with dozens of toothpicks, each skewering a cube of cheddar cheese and a chunk of canned pineapple. The result looked like a spiny hedgehog covered in cheese and fruit. Some hosts added cocktail onions, maraschino cherries, or cubes of ham for variety. Olives made the eyes. The cheese and pineapple hedgehog was a fixture at house parties and buffets throughout the decade, particularly in Britain and across America. It required no cooking, almost no skill, and looked impressive on a crowded party table. Despite its simplicity and charm, the hedgehog disappeared completely from entertaining by the mid-1980s. It is now remembered mostly as a kitsch curiosity of a more playful era. Stuffed celery. Before vegetable trays with ranch dip became the standard, stuffed celery was the go-to crudité at 1970s gatherings. Celery stalks were filled with cream cheese, pimento cheese, or cream cheese blended with blue cheese, and chopped walnuts. Some recipes called for mixing cream cheese with chopped olives and a little garlic. The filled stalks were chilled and then sliced into bite-sized pieces for serving. Stuffed celery was considered elegant enough for cocktail parties, but easy enough for everyday snacking. It appeared on appetizer platters alongside cheese balls and crackers at nearly every social gathering. The snack was a way to make celery, which is, frankly, boring on its own, into something genuinely tasty. As pre-made dips and veggie platters took over in the 1980s, stuffed celery quietly disappeared from the party circuit. Date nut bread. In the 1970s, date nut bread was everywhere. Bake sales, holiday gift baskets, church suppers, afternoon tea. The recipe typically called for chopped dates soaked in boiling water with baking soda, then mixed into a batter with flour, sugar, eggs, vanilla, and chopped walnuts. The result was a dense, moist, slightly sweet loaf with a deep caramel flavor. It was always served sliced thin and spread with a thick layer of cream cheese. Some families baked it in recycled coffee cans, which gave the bread a distinctive round shape. Date nut bread was especially popular around the holidays and was one of those treats that people looked forward to all year. As quick breads like banana bread and zucchini bread gained popularity in later decades, date nut bread faded into obscurity. Dates themselves became less common in American pantries, and a once-beloved treat was largely forgotten. Cheese fondue. No 1970s dinner party was complete without a fondue pot bubbling away on the coffee table. Cheese fondue became a massive craze during the decade. The recipe called for melting Swiss and Gruyere cheese with white wine, a splash of kirsch, and a clove of garlic in a special fondue pot heated by a small burner underneath. Guests dipped cubes of crusty bread, apple slices, broccoli, and boiled potatoes into the warm, gooey cheese using long-handled fondue forks. Fondue sets were one of the most popular wedding and housewarming gifts of the era. Nearly every household had one. The social aspect was part of the appeal. Fondue forced everyone to gather closely around the table and share. By the early 1980s, fondue was considered dated, and millions of fondue sets were banished to the back of kitchen cabinets and garage sale tables. Homemade Rice Krispie treats. The recipe was invented in the 1930s by two women working for the Kellogg Company, but Rice Krispie treats became a kitchen staple in the 1970s. Every mom knew the recipe by heart. Melt butter and marshmallows together in a saucepan, stir in Rice Krispie cereal, press the mixture into a buttered pan, and cut into squares once cooled. It took about 10 minutes, and the ingredients cost almost nothing. Kids loved helping because they got to press the sticky mixture into the pan. Some families added chocolate chips or peanut butter, others drizzled melted chocolate on top. The treats showed up at bake sales, in lunch boxes, and at every school party. While the recipe still exists today, far fewer families make them from scratch. Pre-made Rice Krispie treats in individual wrappers have replaced the homemade version, and the experience of making them together in the kitchen has been largely lost. Ambrosia salad. In the 1970s, Ambrosia salad appeared at nearly every potluck, church supper, and holiday meal. This sweet, creamy concoction combined canned mandarin oranges, crushed pineapple, maraschino cherries, shredded coconut, miniature marshmallows, and Cool Whip or sour cream. Some recipes added chopped pecans or sliced bananas. It was called a salad, but it was really a dessert and everyone knew it. The name Ambrosia comes from the food of the Greek gods, which tells you how highly regarded this dish once was. Making it was easy. You just stirred everything together and chilled it for a few hours. The simplicity was part of the charm. Ambrosia was sweet, cold, and refreshing, and every family had their own version. By the 1990s, it was considered hopelessly old-fashioned. Today, if you bring Ambrosia salad to a potluck, you will likely get some curious looks from anyone under 40. Cheese dreams. These rich, bubbly bites were a party favorite throughout the 1960s and 1970s, especially across the South. Cheese dreams were essentially open-faced cheese toasts made with white bread topped with a mixture of heavy cream, sharp cheddar cheese, butter, and seasonings, then baked or broiled until golden brown and bubbly. The tops got crispy while the inside stayed melty and gooey. Some versions added a strip of bacon on top. Others included a dash of cayenne for heat. Cheese dreams first appeared in cookbooks as early as 1916, but hit their stride during the 1970s cocktail party era. They were cheap, easy to make in big batches, and disappeared from the serving tray in minutes. Despite being absolutely delicious, cheese dreams have become one of those appetizers that almost nobody has heard of anymore. C.T.L.E. Wright was critical. Too hot and the fudge was grainy, not hot enough, and it never set. The marshmallow cream shortcut recipe printed on jars of marshmallow fluff made the process more forgiving, and many families swore by it. Fudge came in countless flavors: peanut butter, vanilla, Rocky Road with marshmallows and walnuts. Christmas tins lined with wax paper and filled with homemade fudge were given as gifts to neighbors and co-workers. Today, very few people go through the effort of making fudge from scratch, and the art of knowing exactly when to pull the pot off the stove is slowly being lost. Pimento cheese spread. In the 1970s, especially across the South, pimento cheese was a staple in nearly every refrigerator. This simple spread combined shredded sharp cheddar cheese with mayonnaise and chopped pimentos, those small sweet red peppers that came in tiny jars. Some recipes added cream cheese for smoothness or a pinch of cayenne. It was served on crackers, stuffed into celery, spread on white bread sandwiches, or eaten straight from the bowl with a spoon. Pimento cheese was a fixture at bridge clubs, garden parties, and family gatherings. Every family had their own recipe, and debates over the best version could get genuinely heated. While pimento cheese still exists in parts of the South, the homemade version, made with hand-grated cheese, has been largely replaced by tubs from the grocery store deli. Party rye pizzas. These tiny open-faced snacks were a 1970s party essential. You would take small squares of cocktail rye bread, top them with a mixture of browned ground beef or sausage mixed with melted Velveeta cheese and Italian seasonings, then broil them until hot and bubbly. In many parts of the Midwest, these were called hanky-pankies or Polish mistakes, though nobody seems to know how they got those names. The beauty of party ryes was that you could make dozens ahead of time, freeze them on cookie sheets, and pop them in the oven whenever company dropped by. They were cheap, filling, and universally loved. Some versions used pizza sauce and mozzarella for a more traditional pizza flavor. Party rye pizzas were the kind of snack that vanished from the tray before you could set it down. They have largely disappeared from modern entertaining. Watergate salad. Despite its political name, this pistachio-flavored dessert had nothing to do with the scandal. Watergate salad appeared in the mid-1970s and quickly became a potluck phenomenon. The recipe called for pistachio instant pudding mix stirred into crushed pineapple, then folded together with Cool Whip, miniature marshmallows, and chopped pecans or walnuts. The result was a fluffy, pale green, sweet concoction that was technically called a salad but fooled absolutely no one. Some called it pistachio delight or green fluff. The recipe was so simple that anyone could make it, which is probably why it showed up at every single gathering in the late 70s. It required no cooking and could be made in 5 minutes. Watergate salad was the kind of dish people pretended to be too sophisticated for, but secretly loved. By the 1990s, it had all but vanished, and today most people under 50 have never heard of it. Among these 25 homemade snacks, which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Cream cheese and olive spread on party bread. In the 1970s, cream cheese and chopped green olives made one of the most popular sandwich spreads in America. You mixed softened cream cheese with finely chopped pimento-stuffed green olives, a little olive brine, and sometimes a dash of Worcestershire sauce. The spread was served on small rounds of pumpernickel or rye party bread, or on crackers, and it appeared at virtually every baby shower, bridal luncheon, and ladies' club meeting of the decade. Some versions added chopped pecans or a bit of garlic powder. The combination of tangy cream cheese and briny olives was oddly addictive. It was one of those spreads that was always the first to disappear from the appetizer table. As more exotic dips became available in supermarkets, the humble cream cheese and olive spread was forgotten, and a whole generation missed out on one of the simplest and tastiest snacks of the era. Homemade caramel corn. Before Cracker Jack had any real competition, and long before gourmet popcorn shops appeared on every corner, homemade caramel corn was a serious undertaking in 1970s kitchens. The recipe required cooking butter, brown sugar, corn syrup, and a little salt into a bubbling caramel, then stirring in baking soda to make it light and crispy before pouring everything over a big batch of popped popcorn. It was spread on cookie sheets and baked low and slow for about an hour, stirring every 15 minutes. The house smelled incredible. Some families added peanuts, others threw in pecans. The finished caramel corn was packed into bags and tins for school fundraisers, holiday gifts, and trick-or-treaters. Making a proper batch was a multi-hour commitment. Today, bagged caramel corn is available everywhere, and the homemade version has become one of those lost kitchen traditions that fewer and fewer families carry on. Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend who remembers these classic homemade snacks. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another trip back to yesterday.